I'm called the helicopter lady of India. We broke a 40-year-old monopoly at that point of time. But if you screw up or your team screws up, remember it's your available stock on the line. What are you doing? And I said, I'm joining my dad's business. And he's like, what is it? "Oh, it's in dealing with the airlines because that is what it was." And he turns around and tells me, oh, but Chaitaly, you're not going to be successful.
Chaitaly, welcome to LogiTALK.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for doing this, and that too on a short notice.
My pleasure.
So let's start by knowing more about you. Take us through your journey from college, then stepping into the big shoes at EKF, and talking more about how your father's legacy has been, and how were you able to ease yourself into it.
So, the very interesting questions. I haven't gone down the memory lane in a very long time, but I should, and you have to tell me when to cut off because when I start talking, I am talking. College, I was a nerdy kid, specs, big size. My friends were very happening. So I would have people approach me to be friends with my friends and not really there. But college was interesting. I didn't attend college every year for 3 months because I refused to waddle in the rains and get wet. So 3 months I would be somewhere or the other around the city, but never in college. I graduated with a special subject, travel and tourism, because I love traveling and I always thought I would land up doing something in traveling. And fate has it that I'm doing this. If you ask me, I was not ambitious. I think the biggest regret that I have is knowing the power of money and knowing what ambition is and things like that. I was this happy-go-lucky kid with 10 rupees in her wallet, thinking that I pretty much own the world kind of a thing. I have been very protected because I'm a very accident-prone person, so lots of accidents when I was growing up and things like that. So the first time I told my dad that I was meeting with a friend in the college library because he was going to teach me something, you know, I still remember the scene right in front of me as if it was just happened today morning. My father was furious because he thought that the guy was going to take advantage of me. And he's like, do you know what happens in college library? I'm like, just chill out. He's like somebody's kid. And he's like, no, but you don't know what you're doing. And I said, you know, and I was in HR. And I always wanted to study away from where I live. And I'm born and brought up in Matunga. So Ruya and Podar were supposed to be the so-called colleges to go. And I was like, I'm not doing this at all. I am traveling. Yes, I'm away. Because I refuse to see people of 5 years in the college. And he's like, no, but how can you? And my mom. So she's the one who's like the strength in the family. And she went to town. She was in Jai Hind. She's a Jai Hind. And she's like, no, you can go. There is absolutely no problem. So that began my thing. I made some fantastic friends. My first time abroad was with some friends from college. And once college got over, I've always been a distinction student. And I think I kind of just took too much of it, as in like with the pride that you say, no, that it's always there. Because I didn't know what first class was. I didn't know what second class was, God forbid. And I always had a rank. Not the top 3, but I've always been one of the top 10 kind of a thing. My father insisted, it's all about him because he's the root cause of all of this.
No, we want to understand that.
He insisted that I should take accounts. And I suck at math. To the extent that I had to mug up my algebra, geometry, and my maths teacher was so worried whether I would actually go through or not. And luck behold, we had the worst paper. I barely scraped through. All my friends who did management had 75, 77, 78, 80%. And they're not even rank holders. So you can imagine it's been 28 years since I graduated and it still hurts and it's not supposed to hurt this much. So we finished off, I was holidaying in America and my father didn't have the courage to tell me that I got a second class. So I came back and I remember asking him, where are the results? And he's like, they haven't come out yet. And I was like, okay, fine, you know, and we didn't have cell phones or anything of that sort. And I had close friends, but not too many. I'm pretty much of a loner that way. And 4 days later, he tells me your results are out. And I had, freaking 52%. And I was so upset.
You would have been very hard on yourself, right?
Very hard. I remember sulking. And you know, growing up, you can't throw tantrums at your parents, right? Today's kids are different. But that time you can't throw tantrums. And I remember getting so upset because then my friends from everywhere all had taken management and everybody is 75, 77, 80. And I'm like, crap, how does this work? And I was sulking and I was, Look, I have had no ambition, Kunal. So growing up, if you ask me, the only thing in my life was to be a wife and a mother.
Right.
Not necessarily in that order,
Correct.
but I knew that my life was 25, a housewife,
Right.
27, my first
It
child.
was all panned out in front
It
of
was
your eyes.
planned. It was clear cut. People
Yeah.
ask me and I would go like, I don't need to do anything.
Right.
I'm going to be a housewife at 25, 27, I'm my first child, 30, my second child. And since I'm going to marry a rich good
Right.
Jew with the idea of traveling the world, because at that point that was the only
Correct.
important thing in my life, I'm like, I'll have a third child.
Right.
So by the time I'm 45, I'm done and finished with, and I'm going to do it. And all of this happened. So I wouldn't get admission in law college. I couldn't get admission in MBA, though I have to feel a little bit nice because there was another friend of mine who got even worse marks than me. So the only consolation was that he also could not get into an MBA college. But genuinely, when I was reading Eric Segal when I was 16, so my uncle asked me, what are you doing? I said, I'll just go to Harvard.
Right.
You know, because how difficult it is. There you have Eric Segal's doctors. And at the end of it, it was supposed to be that I'll study medicine, but
Right.
obviously I'm not going to be a doctor. I'm going to find a husband and I'll land up because New
Correct.
York's my favorite city. What better way than to settle there and things like
Absolutely,
that. But this happened. So I was sulking and I was really sulking, and my parents tend to be very dramatic and over the top, like those typical Gujju parents, and they went on for like a week and they're like, what are you doing with your life? And I remember whatever little cable you had, I would be
Right.
sitting and watching of that. And they went like, do you intend to do something with your life? And I said, I don't really know what, because this has really upset me, clearly. So I remember my dad was in between the bathroom and his room. He was in his room and he's like, my mom called and my dad was shaving, half shaved, and he's like, listen, do you want to come to work? And my dad's been traveling
Right.
the whole time that we've been growing up. He hates the fact when I say that you've been a weekend dad,
Correct.
and my mother's been growing us and raising us, which is fine. I guess all of us have gone through it to get to where we are. So I remember him saying, so do you want to join? And I'm like, but what am I going to do?
Right.
And he says, you have to work. I said, but I will have to travel.
Correct.
And he's like, we will see. I said, no, I am sorry.
So you were gutsy enough to keep your conditions there.
I was like,
Wow.
listen, you have to let me travel.
Right.
Because all I knew of what my father did at that time was he was traveling.
Right.
Nothing else. Like what was cargo?
that's the
what
cool
is-
part,
That
yeah.
is the cool part. And for somebody who's been wanting to travel since he was 3 years
Right.
old, so when somebody said, I said, after the mountain is America,
Right.
my Masi lives there, so I'm just going to climb over the mountain and go to America. So that was the reason why my dad, even though we are good Jews and all, got me to start eating non-veg. And now my parents feel that's like the biggest mistake, because obviously people
Yeah.
know my love for food and the
Correct.
stuff the lengths that I go to try
Right.
different foods and things like that. So he said this and I was like, if I don't get to travel, I'm not interested. And he's like, okay. And they never thought that I will stick around. And none of us realized what we were getting into, because obviously no idea as to when my coming there, how it's going to work out and all. First day, he had these bar stools over there, red color ones. I still have one for memory's sake in
Right,
my
of
office. So
course.
when you come, I will show you that bar stool. Very uncomfortable,
Right.
more uncomfortable than this.
Right.
Only benefit was that it was short, so my feet.
correct.
But I was made to sit in front of our then export manager, and it was a desk, so I could not even lift my legs or stretch them. It was literally like this. First day, 12 hours. And then I say, I'm going home, and he says, Acha, pati gayu. This. I said, but everybody is going home. He says, yeah, but are you done? So I called up my mother. We had this red colored rotary phone. And I said, Dad's saying this. And she says, Acha, but pati gayu. I'm like, how can you take his side? And that started my journey into cargo.
Right.
I was not allowed to travel with him.
Right.
There was no car for me,
Right.
not for my sister also.
Right.
We were trained that way. So I had to change 2 buses because I refused to travel by train.
Office must be near Ballard
Chakala.
Estate?
No, Chakala.
Oh, it was Chakala. Okay.
Always, still has
Alright.
been. So Harish bhai doesn't want to move out of Adarsh. So we are pretty much in
right,
Adarsh.
right.
So I had to change 2 buses.
Right.
Matunga to Dadar,
Correct.
and then from Dadar to Andheri,
Right.
and walk from the highway down the road to
my
Adarsh.
God. Yeah.
So it started off summers, winters, rains. Summers were all right. Winters were still better.
And this time rains were okay for you to go to office.
Oh,
now,
rains-
now you can't skip. Just
Now,
like
it's,
school.
now I
Yeah.
can't skip. umbrellas, but they don't work, right,
Right.
with the monsoons that you have. And then to walk all the way, I remember wearing my salwar kameezes because I was like, and there was like a lot of things I could not wear. I had to wear below the knee
Correct.
and proper salwar kameezes, not touching the body and not figure hugging my father. Strict disciplinarian. So all of that. Then it went on for like almost about a year or so. Meenu uncle and Prabha uncle, God bless their souls, they no longer part with us. Hemant uncle, again, God bless his soul. They were all in Adarsh and they would see me. So initially, I would wave out to them because their cars would go and they would say hi to me. Then they started looking the other way when
Right.
I was walking. And I didn't know, but they would fire my dad and say, "What the hell are you doing? Don't you think
What-
you've
what are you
trained?
making her do?
Yeah,
Yeah.
haven't you like made her walk enough?
Exactly, yeah.
Do it. Shouldn't you do it?" And by the way, I was like free labor for 3 years. He didn't pay me a salary, and I did my first DG training before I officially got into office, and I came second. I did my Air India. So I did UFTA, which was passenger. I came second there. Then we did the Fiata Basic. I think I was first or second again over there. This was all within the first year of joining and Air India,
So it was always in the blood.
it was always in the blood. So I
Yeah.
think going round, it just kind of happened. And then, oh, I should tell you this. Just before I was going to join, 2 days or 3 days before, I was out with my friends at a nightclub, and her then boyfriend said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm joining my dad's business." And he's like, "What is it?" I said, "It's in dealing with the airlines," because that
Right.
is what it was. And he turns around and tells me, "Oh, but Chaitaly, you're not going to be successful." And I was like, "Why will I not
That's a
be
strange thing to
successful?"
say, yeah.
So he says, "Because you're not beautiful. And because you're working with airlines, you have to be pretty. And obviously, you're not in shape." And I was like, that's bullshit.
Yeah.
So that, coupled with the fact that every time I was going home, my dad would say, "Pati gayu, are you finished? Are you tired?" My mother is like, "Are you ready to give up?" This was only because I didn't complete my, I am one exam short of doing graduation in dance.
Right.
2 exams
Oh.
short, yeah. So I've actually done 5 levels. If I do 2 more levels, I get a degree in dance.
Okay.
And nobody knows about it, but I actually studied Kathak for 14 years. And
Awesome.
yes, and I gave my exams and all of that. So between my parents telling me this and this guy's words ringing in the back of my head, I was like, you know what, now to forget it. I have to show these people that I'm going to stick around.
Right.
That was that day, and this is now. 14 hours, 15 hours a day, 7 days a week. Where my 20s went, I didn't know. Where my 30s went, when I didn't know. When I turned 40, I went like, shit, man.
Time has flown by.
Time has flown by. Maybe now I should start taking holidays. So my
Yeah.
first holiday happened 18 years later.
Oh.
I didn't take a holiday for
Life
18
came
years.
full 360.
360. So when my friends were still figuring out
Yeah.
what they had to do
Yeah.
in life, I was already full on. I had finished almost about 10 years at work, set up new verticals and stuff. So it's been very, very interesting. Some of my biggest success came at a time when there was a lot, it's not easy for kids in family business to get acceptance from your own staff.
Right.
You get acceptance from outside, but your
Plus
own
it's big
people.
shoes to fill.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's not only big shoes, but they somehow think of you as a threat.
Right.
See, you have a long way to go to fill up your father's shoes or your mother's shoes,
Right.
as the case may be. You're not going to be a boss overnight.
Right.
But for them, because you're going to sit out with them and you're going to be around the same people who are going to be hi hello with you, but when you start working with them, it's a different
Right.
equation. So for me, acceptance from outside came very easy because I was the first. So we had Somil, who had just joined 1 year before me, but I joined. We didn't have women at that point of time. We didn't have any girl children joining.
Correct.
Also, I got into operations. So I got into all the difficult stuff
Right.
that even though there were women in the industry, they were either doing finance or they were doing the back end work and
Correct,
all.
correct.
But we didn't have them going out there talking to those officers or doing things like that. Marketing, yes, but finance and things like that, but not all of this. So it was a different time for people. And I have to say that Bombay Air Cargo Complex, the customs, the airport, they gave me so much. Like I tell everybody, it's like a Sadahova record, but that I'm a child of the industry. I know the complex much better than what I know the ins and outs
Back
of
of
my
your head,
house.
yeah.
I don't know my house or my room that much better as much as I do. I know where my office stuff is because I spend so much of time there. But this industry, that gawky, nerdy kid not knowing everything to what I am today, everything in between to here is all because of this industry. Of course, the full credit goes to my dad, Harish Bhai, but I've had very good teachers, I've had very bad teachers.
But you learn from every aspect, right?
Everything.
Someone once told me that sometimes that moment comes, what
Yes.
happens, your responsibility becomes your passion. And then I'm sure your father was passionate about the business, but you tend to be more passionate about it. And that's when that's the change of guard. I don't know. I mean, that's when things are
True, it
you know,
is.
it's-
I completely agree with you. One, I believe that this industry is not for the faint-hearted.
Yeah, of course
It does
not.
not
Yeah.
matter at what level you are, whether you are at the top or you are at the bottom.
Right.
Even our peons and runner boys,
Right.
if they can't handle the kind of stress that we put them through, they can't make it over here. So
it's for the thick skin. You know,
Yes,
it's,
not only the thick skin, it's also for those where the blood zincs. I
Right.
firmly believe that if you learn something in the first 6 months, you could just pick up 2 things. But if you learn those 2 things, you are meant to be in this industry.
Yeah.
But if after 6 months you still haven't picked up the basic of it, this industry
Yes.
is not for you.
Yeah.
And this industry doesn't do anybody favors.
No,
So
no,
you
it
cannot
doesn't.
come saying that you are an XYZ's daughter
Yeah.
or XYZ's
Doesn't
son.
work.
So the doors will open. But people are only going to respect you once you start proving to them
Absolutely.
that the work is happening.
Absolutely.
So I am Harish Mehta's daughter. I am Naval Mehta's niece. And I am Hargovindas Jamnadas Mehta's granddaughter.
Right.
But that's where it stops.
Correct.
There is a whole thing beyond that. So I've had to prove.
Of course,
And
of course.
the verticals that we created today, we are the largest in the aviation space in India. I still remember approaching KLM because they were our first client, and Meera Juneja turned around and said, "You are Harish Bhai's daughter, but don't expect any favors from me. If you mess
she
up,
did.
oh, she
Oh my
did. She said, and I've never forgotten her
Right.
words. So she said, "You are Harish Mehta's daughter. I will give you a chance, but if you screw up or your team screws up, remember it's your available stock on the line. I will take your stock away." And I was like, Meera, it's not going to happen because
Right.
before you do this, my father will kill me. Because there's nothing more important to him on earth than his
Correct,
company and
correct.
the work that he does. So I said, he's not going to I'm not going to let it come to that
Right.
thing. So KLM was our first guinea pig, and today we are the largest. We broke a 40-year-old monopoly at that point of time, and it happened because they got overconfident or cocky.
Correct,
They were not.
correct.
So it was being at the right place at the right time.
And right execution also.
Right execution
Yeah.
is because we brought something to the table that they were not in a position to deliver.
Absolutely.
And they were asked to do it and they could not do it, and therefore we just stepped in at the right thing.
Right.
And I think that's what they call grabbing the opportunity, right? That if
100%.
somebody else is going to do it, then why not us? And that's how we started off. I'm called the helicopter lady of India because in the aviation vertical that we do, nobody does aviation the way we do because we do the whole 360 degrees holistic approach, and we are the only ones who are trained in helicopter logistics. And my team, so we fly whenever we have to do it.
Right.
And we do everything. So except for the dismantling and the engineering stuff,
Correct.
we pretty much work on it. So because of that, somebody gave me the moniker during COVID period, and that's pretty much stuck around
Right.
as that.
The
And
helicopter lady.
the helicopter lady. And of course, there are lots of other things. There have been a lot of firsts to my name, but it's been a good run.
No, I would say one thing which I admire about you is you're a very strong and determined lady. And for some reason, you have become the change maker for women in logistics. All right, let's put it out there. But explain me. So, what has changed from then and now?
Everything. I think first is the fact that we have more women owners than what we did before. And even at that point when we had owners, they were literally like a proxy. So it was for the father, for the brother, or for the husband. It was not for themselves.
Right.
So they needed them to be a license holder. Signing is because should something happen to the males in the family, there is somebody to run the business,
Right,
but they were not getting into the operational part of it. So they were always in the office. Now we have women in the operations. So when I say women in the operations means their operational knowledge has increased 3-fold, 10-fold. They know how to deal with the topics. They know how to deal with the subject and with the shipments and all. They come, explain, and they get their problems solved. That is the first thing that has happened. The second thing is that the government of India has officially declared that women, gender diversity and equality, which is missing in the supply chain, from customs to the private companies, everybody has to do this. Number 3 is the fact that now you compulsory need to have a woman on board of your companies.
Right, of course,
In
yes.
private and public
Yes.
limited companies. That is very important. And you know, people are very careful when they appoint women as directors because they need somebody who makes sense and things like that. The other thing is that people understand now, and I'm not going to say that it's completely changed, Kunal, but I would say more than 50% people have understood that you need to have the female perspective along with a male perspective because both of them combined together make a fantastic team. Am I saying it's easy? No, it's not. Has it been easy for me, even though I'm a child of this industry? No. I was made to beg, I was made to cry. Things that could have been easy for my male counterpart were difficult for me. I was judged. So I have waited I do the marketing, I'm the face of the company.
Exactly.
I have waited 16 years and 13 years for clients to say yes to me.
Really?
Really. And it's all on record. So, and it's just been that fraction when things just aligned in the universe and they went like, okay, this is it. And I'm like, yes, wherever I am, I'm coming and let's just sign on the dotted line. So the maximum that I have waited is 16 years. When I was asking people for business, I was termed as aggressive. But when others were asking for business, he's a go-getter.
Exactly,
And it is,
really?
So, you know,
that gets
Yes.
distinguished with gender?
Very, very, very. So, for the longest time, the industry called me, oh, Chaitaly is very good, but she's aggressive. She's very honest, but she's aggressive. And I would go like, I am not aggressive. I am just doing the job that I've taken the responsibility for because I know that I have to take care of the people in my company and we are going to be doing it. So if that means that I'm being passionate, you can't label me as aggressive because the guys also need to be labeled as aggressive. But
there, on one side, it's looked at from a positive angle,
Yes.
and from another side,
it is. And we have some phenomenal women in the industry.
for sure.
You know, people look at me right now and they look at my pictures in the magazines or in the newsletters, newspapers. They look at me on the cover pages and the awards that I'm winning. What people don't know is that all of this has happened only in 6 years. I completed 28 years in October. I have been in the industry, but the visibility that was there. So everybody in air freight would know me, right? Chaitaly, Chaitaly, Chaitaly. But did anybody really do it? So it was Bhandarkar Times who gave me my first award 6 years ago as the Star Woman of the Month. My first article came out 6 years ago, followed with my invite to Colombo, the famous one where I went blank as my first speaking assignment. I think then the magazine started slowly coming. After that, it's been there. So I want to tell everybody, the kids there, that don't look at the glamorous side because it looks like it's very glamorous, but I've had to put in a lot of work, a lot of hard work, sweat, tears.
It's like
So-
the iceberg, right? You don't see the
Exactly,
bottom
you
half,
don't
but you just see the top
So-
half. Yeah.
So Nigel, who designs or who used to design, I don't know if he still does it, designs cars for Formula One. And we were importing, they were coming up with the mini Grand Prix in India.
Okay.
So whilst we were not considered good enough to be the official partners, logistics partner, because the funders and the investors thought that having an MNC company was the best way to do it. But the creators were like, we need Chaitaly on board. So we came on board as an advisor and as a consultant. And it was such full of irony that the MNCs had to give their interview to me and I had to decide which MNC was good. So one of them said, "Madam, क्या करेंगे आपके लिए?" I said, "मेरे लिए कुछ नहीं करना है, मेरे को सिर्फ मेरा काम करना है." So I remember talking to the guy and saying, I said, you know, I think I've just been offered my first bribe. I don't know if I should do it because I just make money and I can retire.
Right.
But that's on the other lightest note. So we got in to do this, and Nigel told me that he never thought that he would see in India a girl standing at 2 o'clock in the morning with an umbrella, standing with an umbrella, directing 20 people as to how the car had to be offloaded from the vehicle on into Oberoi at 2 o'clock in the morning, and it was actually a spectacle. We had around 50 people at 2 in the morning figuring out whether we knew what we were doing. And when I went into the cargo complex for the car, I had like 50 people around me saying, "Madam, ye Lamborghini hai, madam, ye hai, madam, ye hai." And the biggest compliment came is one of the biggest dealers of the spare parts in the cars. I was on the stage and he went like, "Oh, Chet," and he was also a client of ours. He says, "You brought the car, right?" I said, "Yeah, we did the clearance." He's like, "I just figured that if something as complicated as this had to be done, it would have been your team." I thought that was a really nice thing to do. But coming back, what has changed is the awareness. What is also important is the self-confidence, the self-esteem, because typically women suffer from lower self-esteem and low self-confidence. We have a lot of issues. Even somebody like me, I've had a whole bunch of stuff which was going on. This helps in making a change. So when people say that they saw me at an interview or they read an article and that inspired them to join the business or join the industry, I feel very happy because it's not necessarily just the kids. We are talking people in the airlines, we are talking people at doing different things. And now what has changed is the acceptance at every single level. Infrastructure. I'm not saying we still have the best infrastructure. We still have places where a basic thing as a bathroom is missing, but it is there, as in the infrastructure. I head the women's wing for FFFAI. I'm also I'm a part of BCBA and ACFI and ACAI and everything. When I joined ACAI, I was the first woman in the history to join as a Western Region office bearer. Then I went to the managing committee, still the first woman. Now I'm the first woman in the 53-year of history to be an office bearer. There are women who will join, hopefully. With FFFAI, when I was given the charge that you need to get more women in, it was just about 2 years ago, last term. We started with 4 women. Today we are 100 plus. Today I have men come and say, "Oh, madam, we know you. Can you take my wife? Can you take my daughter? Can you take my staff? We would be very happy." And I'm like, "Yes." So we collaborate with World Bank. I'm a speaker with World Bank. They invite me, CII, all of that. Of course, it's because of the platforms that have been given and things. But Kunal, I'm telling you, the life has changed in the last 6 years. And what is important is the visibility. Women were not, even though we were visible, we were visibly, I would say invisibly visible or visibly visible, with whatever thing works out. But it's a fantastic time to be in the industry now. We have women in almost every single spectrum, vertical or sub-industry of what logistics is. Whether we are taking logistics, we are taking maritime, we are taking transport. We have one of the first women transport owners. She's doing a fantastic job. We have,
and transport is a very rough business.
It's a very, very rough business. So for doing it, it's hats off to Reema for what she does. We have some phenomenal women from the shipping lines, from the airlines. I think the newcomers will not know. Vasu auntie, Farida auntie, Nasreen, they all were stalwarts of their time. They didn't have to have the designation, but they ran Air India. So if you talk to the the old timers or the stalwarts, these women with, Meera Juneja and all, they were literally the boss ladies. So a lot of what I picked up was from them and learning from them and doing things. But it has been a very, very impressive thing. So here the idea was very simple. The doors that opened for me, the visibility that I got, but I got much later in my life. I didn't want that to happen to the other women. So the promise was that they would get all the access that I have access to. They have access not just to the customs, but to the think tanks, to the minds that we have in the industry. Their confidence has to be boosted, their self-esteem has to be developed, and more importantly, we are giving them a platform that they use to go. And actually I'm so proud. Just 2 weeks ago, I was in Chennai. We were launching the IFF training program and I was invited. And we had this one lady send me the sweetest message saying that the first time she went out was with us when we did our women's trip to Vizag and Kakinada. After that, she's done 3 overseas trips. and she's for network conferences, and then she's come with us because we do a lot of field trips and all. And she says that if it was not for the women's wing, I would not have had the confidence to go get out of my comfort zone and travel. And we all know that if we don't travel in our industry, we are going to perish.
Yeah, work won't happen. I think as they say, someone has to lead the change.
Yes.
So probably you have that responsibility on your hands, and
Yes.
it's a big one. It's a big one because see, first of all, this industry is niche.
Yes.
And then you need to give women the confidence that okay, you could be there. So it's a very, very
So
tough.
it was a promise to myself that what people believe, that women are women's worst enemies and they don't let women grow, because when you are powerful, you don't want other women to become powerful.
Right.
It was a promise to myself that it is going to be completely opposite of that whatever power is there, every single woman is going to understand and feel that power.
Right.
And every single woman is going to be given that opportunity to get that visibility, to feel important, and most important, be called. When I was initial stages, when I would go to a party, before I could even say hello, people will go like, "Oh, where is Harish bhai? Where is Harish bhai?" And he's trained me differently.
Yeah.
So the first time I had a meal alone was in Bangalore. I remember banging the phone down on him and saying, "Oh, what the hell? I will just stay hungry." But obviously you can't stay hungry because I've never eaten a meal by myself, right? And it's one of those most difficult things. I know a lot of people who find it uncomfortable. I mean, that was 20 odd years ago. But the women, so coming back to this particular thing, is the confidence. We all lack it. You just need that one person to believe in you. And I promised myself that what happened to me would never happen to anybody
Anyone
else.
else,
So there was no question of threat. There was no question. They get visibility from every form. So they are invited at all panels. They get to speak, which is the most difficult thing. We encourage them to write.
But that must be boosting the confidence like miles and bounds, right?
It's a personal high for me.
Yeah.
When I see these kind of messages that come, when I see these women who travel and come out of their comfort zone, when they have to write an article, get them to write a 3-line article, Kunal, is like getting somebody to give a thesis exam. It's so difficult. You have to keep pushing them. And now, when we started off with this whole initiative of having women write articles, we only had one article. And I remember calling up women and saying, "But you write so well, just write a goddamn article." And from there to having at least about 8 or 10 women contribute is
I think
a
it's
good thing.
sometimes you just need that push.
Yes.
You became the catalyst for them.
Yes.
More importantly.
True.
But tell me one thing, okay? You spoke about something about travel.
Yes.
Are you able to do that now, or work consumes a lot of time?
Okay, so I have to say there are two aspects to it.
Okay.
People who don't like me and who are my critics
Right.
would like to believe that I use the company as an excuse to actually go do holidays, which is so further away from the truth. But people who know me know that yes, travel, look, if I don't travel, I can't breathe. For me, travel is as good as living. So when COVID happened, and before that, something happened at work and I was stuck in Bombay for a year and a half. I'm telling you, I had withdrawal symptoms. I now understood when my friends said when they were giving up smoking, when they were going dry. I completely
You could
understood
relate, yeah.
because I was living out of a suitcase 20 days in a
Correct,
month.
correct.
The airport was more familiar to me than everything else.
True.
And then I just had to be here.
Yeah.
So no, I mean,
Sometimes it just becomes the process, right?
Yes.
Go, swipe, check in. This.
Correct.
You sometimes start missing that. You're like, what's happening?
When I traveled after COVID, I forgot about my baggage tag and I was like, what, Chaitaly? How can you forget? Do you have to have a boarding pass? But travel is very essential.
Yeah.
I think travel gives me the ideas.
Yeah, of course.
It gives me that peace that needs to be thought for, what we need to do better for the company. It actually keeps me in perspective. The power that we have because of the positions that you, me, we all hold, Kunal, it's a thin line. You could go on to this side or you could go on to this side. It's a very fine line to walk, and I'm very conscious of the fact that I have been blessed with so many opportunities and there is so much of, people have so many expectations out of me, but it's so easy to get carried away with all of that and get into that negative aspect. So travel keeps the human side of me alive. it it and I've always believed that the minute I get out of Adarsh, I cease being Chaitaly, Mehta, Express Cargo or EKF Global as what it is. It makes me Chaitaly, Mehta, an average middle class
dreamer,
the walker, the one who enjoys walking, listening to music. If I don't have that connection, I lose the ethos of who I am as a person. And if I have to be successful and with the kind of work that we do, with the pressures that we have, see, I'm very proud of the fact that we are a mid-sized company. And we are what you call as your typical MSMEs kind of a thing, and we are happy in that niche because the kind of work that we do is good for us.
Demands
as long as
Correct.
and as long as we are making the money and things like that, it is all nice, and my staff is happy. But it's also very important to remain grounded and not forget who you are at the end of the day. I think a lot of us have forgotten our roots and have forgotten where we start off from. So for me, that is very important. And travel, because I always lose myself, I'm always lost. There is some kind of something happening to me at some point there, and people are either frantically calling or I'm calling somebody and saying, "Can I? I am lost. How do we do this?" I'm not even a tech savvy person. So I learned how to use GPS only because I was walking and I didn't know whether I was going in the north or which was the south, and I was getting myself lost. But travel keeps me sane. And if I didn't travel, I don't know what I would do with my life. People tell me I should start a blog. People tell me I should be writing. I should have my own YouTube channel, doing things. But
it's just for yourself.
It's just for myself.
Yeah, it's just for yourself. It's your go-to thing, which you're passionate about.
It is. So I am very active on Instagram, but I just don't post everything on Instagram. There are certain things which are just meant for me and for what I like when I do these food, when I'm traveling, even if it is for work. There is always that one meal that you can take off on your own, because you know how it is.
Absolutely.
You have as crazy life as I lead, and that one meal is like my time. And I
want to cherish it.
I want to cherish it. So if people say we will come with you, I'm like, if you're not going to crib about the cost, about the venue, about the food, then you're most welcome to come with me. But if you do any of those, you're not coming, because that's like the most treasured time. But I think travel keeps things in perspective and has got me a lot of good ideas that we could, when we want to set up different
Makes
verticals.
you aware of so many different things. I mean, every world is different. Every country is different. But if you have to name one of your most favorite destination, what would it be?
I would have to say 3. There's not one.
Okay.
Because I think they're all in a tie.
All right.
Singapore has emotional connection because my first country was Singapore.
All right.
And I grew up with that country. So I've been traveling since I was 18. So I've been going there. And I discovered who a part of Chaitaly was in Singapore. New York, again, because I've always been fascinated by New York, and I've been wanting to visit that city since I was 3 years old. Again, I discovered another aspect to me in New York, so New York is another one. And the third one, surprisingly, is Sydney.
Oh wow, okay. Down under.
Down under. Sydney gives me the peace. And Sydney gives me the peace unlike any...
Bondi Beach.
Oh, actually, you know what? I've never been to Bondi Beach.
Oh, you haven't?
No. I haven't.
Oh, really?
So I walk around QEB, I walk around CBD, I take a bus from my friend's place and I go down to CBD area and then I am walking all around the place, discovering everything. The peace that I find in Sydney, I don't find anywhere else. Not even in Hong Kong. Like Hong Kong would be my next favorite. After that, I love the city to bits, and some of my favorite food is in that city. But every place that I go to teaches me something, or there has been an incident or something
which connects you with
something which connects. Like if you ask me, Prague is tears because I got lost and I was running around the Jewish area crying and asking them, look, is the boat, because I always get lost and I always get left behind. So when I was in Frankfurt, and I speak German, a little bit of German, and I went like, but you told me 5 minutes, and they went like, but you didn't come in 5 minutes, and I realized it took me 15 minutes.
I think we need to place an air tag in your bag
to
and
figure
give it
out,
to someone
to find out. actually that's a good idea because there's somebody who's always
Yeah,
tracking me
yeah.
as to what it is, where I am. So, and I keep telling my dad, I said, like, he knows where I am, or my mother knows where
Yeah.
I am at any given, my dad more than that. And I'm like, listen, I don't need you to tag me like this. I would rather have some hot guy tag me, but I don't need you to figure out where I'm. But no, it's been fun. Travel and food, I think they go hand in hand.
Yes, very
And
much.
they pretty much make up of who I am in terms of what I like and what the human part of me.
Which makes Chaitaly the helicopter lady.
Actually, I would like to say the aviation because I think I'm always going to be an airline.
Yeah,
Helicopters are nice.
Right.
But
you want to fly further.
you want to fly further. So helicopters is something which is very glamorous.
Right.
But planes are
Yeah.
underrated.
Yeah.
And they are the ones that are going to take you.
Correct.
And they are the ones, right? They are the backbone, right?
Absolutely.
If it was not for the planes, so whether you're talking your
No one could see.
two-seater,
Yeah,
yes.
that's right.
It's never like that. So I think I'm always going to be an air girl. Like
Okay.
we brought in the first kiosk for KLM all those years ago.
Okay.
And we never had a touchscreen. KLM
Right.
was the first one with a touchscreen.
Right.
And I remember for the longest time waving out to the KLM kiosk and saying, I hope the passengers are treating you right.
Right.
And then when I saw everybody else come up, Indigo came up with the
Exactly,
second, Jet Airways came up, there was such a sense of pride. So when I fly now, and when I know that my teams worked on it, when I flew Cathay, when I flew Cathay, we had just taken them on board and we were
Okay.
doing their in-flight catering. I actually wanted to get up and tell the people, do you think the food is nice? Because you know what? It's my company that's brought it on.
Exactly. You have some impression on it.
Yes. So
Yeah.
when you had when you have the carpets, the uniforms. So when I go to the airport, I feel so happy because I know my teams worked on it.
Right. Right.
And every little thing that you see of some airline somewhere is related to us, whether
Right.
it is the tow bar or it is the jack or it's
Right.
the wheels that the aircraft has.
Right.
We're pretty much there everywhere. So I think I'm always going to be an air girl.
Wonderful, Chaitaly. I think it was lovely having you on
Thank
LogiTALk.
you.
And I must say, really inspired by the story. I think every person who joins their family business needs that kind of grounding.
Yes.
I also got one. And that is what makes someone themselves.
Yes.
That is when you discover the best side of you.
We all live under the shadows of our fathers for the work that they do. We are always going to be known as their children. But it's very important that our identity is our identity and that we find our own niche for ourselves. It
Correct.
could be anything.
Correct.
And we never let the pressure of who we are or our surname get to us.
Right.
And we honestly remain authentic because if you remain authentic with anything that you do and if you are honest to your craft, it just rewards you. Like Kunal, you are a success story yourself. I know when your dad Amitji started off and Arun and all, and what has happened, but you bring your own energy, you bring your own sense of work and style to the industry. So when I talk to my friends and all, nobody talks about your dad anymore.
Right.
It's always about you and the work that you're doing. I remember the first time that we met and when
Correct.
we were talking, you were so patient in listening to what a client wants or what a
Correct.
customer wants. And I
Correct.
think that's very, very important. And as long as we don't forget who we are outside our companies, outside our building walls, I think the world is for our taking.
Correct. Correct.
And we should be able to make a difference. I think we all are in our own little ways making difference to the industry.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think we are all creating a little bit of the legacy
Yeah.
to be added on to our family legacies.
Correct.
And it's going to be a good time. It's
Correct.
a good time to be in business. And it's a
Yes.
good time to be
Exciting
alive
times,
and be there and see the future because all of you, the next gen, are all doing some brilliant, brilliant, phenomenal work.
Thank you, Chaitaly. And
Thank you.
thank you for the appreciation and thank you for being on the show.
Thank you very much.